Welcome live to Shotgun Saturday Night. Today, ladies and gentlemen, last week ago, ladies and gentlemen, I accidentally forgot that I was doing a Shotgun Saturday Night. Instead, I was actually doing the Mr. Glow podcast. So I had to do a two-part episode. But I'm sure you people enjoyed the two-part episode. 2 for 1 day. Free. It's free. But yeah, again, guys, that's not the point. The point is, guys, last week ago, I had to talk about the person, the pioneer that created boxing. But now, guys, with all that being said, guys, considering, guys, ladies and gentlemen, just to let you viewers know, considering boxing has been on a hiatus, ladies and gentlemen, and let me just calm my throat so I won't strain my throat. For the next half hour, ladies and gentlemen, I am going to review another documentary of bare knuckle boxing. Guys, a couple weeks ago, ladies and gentlemen, I've already done the episode of bare knuckle boxing in the UK. That was by Vice. And Vice, like I said before, guys, the channel and production crew of Vice that created the show Dark Side of the Ring and Dark Side of Comedy, which I kind of enjoy a little bit, already did bare knuckle boxing. And even though, for all due to respect, they've, like I said before, there's also another documentary that came out a few months ago. Well, probably like 6 months ago, because they did like 5 or so months ago, they did a 1-part episode and a 2-part episode and a 3-part episode. And the episodes were like 20 to 30 minutes long in the middle. And the full documentary was released in a total of 1 hour, 10 minutes and 6 seconds 3 months ago, which was known as the Spartan Bare Knuckle. But there is another documentary, guys, that came out. You see, guys, back around the time, like 11 years ago, back in July the 8th, 2014, the underground bare knuckle boxing in the UK was released. And I've already talked about that episode, even though if I didn't get to the details as properly and as I should have. But I wanted you guys to watch it yourself, just for the fare of it. But then on October the 4th, 2018, was a time when bare knuckle boxing finally became the new era in the 21st century. And it was uploaded by Vice as they released a documentary that was 35 minutes and 56 seconds long, titled America's First Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship. So now this is the new era of the USA of bare knuckle boxing. This is the story of the BKFC. Ladies and gentlemen, how did BKFC started? How did any of this started? Technically, guys, does it even matter if this is a sport or not? Well, guys, the dictionary, or technically the description of the video was titled, "Since its heyday in the late 1800s, bare knuckle boxing in the U.S. has been relegated to parking lots and grimly basements." And to be honest, guys, the UK and the USA at those times back in the old days, because in the late 1800s, that's where it was. And also back in even the 20th century, as of right now, that's what bare knuckle boxing was in the UK back in the day. They did the same thing. Parking lots, basements, even bar clubs. Just like the end of the documentary of the UK bare knuckle boxing had 2 guys, one from America and one from the UK, battling in a bar for a world title. And they were near hay barrels, like hay bales, cornered hay barrels. No rope rings, nothing. So pretty much. But it also says here, an underground sport that couldn't find a way to bring itself above board. But in June of 2018, after spending years petitioning almost 30 states to sanction the brutal fights, promoter David Fetterman finally managed to stage America's first ever legal bare knuckle boxing match in Wyoming. Wyoming, ladies and gentlemen. And guys, as I'm actually recording this episode, ladies and gentlemen, well, quite frankly, when we look up the day here, as this episode's already being released right now on the 9th of Saturday, 2 days from now on the 11th of Monday, I've already done UFC 6. UFC 6, which that show took place in Casper, Wyoming. So to be honest, it's actually probably better to talk about this show because it took place in Wyoming. I was going to talk about the America's first bare knuckle champion some other time, but ever since I've already reviewed UFC 6, which took place in July of 1995, which took place, as I just said, in Casper, Wyoming. So I thought to myself, you know what? Why don't we just talk about this show because it was also in Wyoming as well. And as this video is already being uploaded, in the next 2 days, the next Mr. Glow podcast will be UFC 6. So kill two birds with one stone. Hey, talk about Wyoming. It's probably for the best. Hey, that's where Forrest Fenn's chest was. Treasure. I can't even talk straight right now. Yeah, guys, I got to take my time to breathe. And you know what, guys? Speaking about taking your time to breathing, how about we give myself a little bit of nothing much there, Twix iced tea. Oh, boy. Let me just calm my breath right now. It's already been 6 minutes since I started this podcast. But it won't stop me from pulling out this thing here. Okay, this is actually a pain in the butt. There we go. I've already tried this before, so it doesn't matter. Boy, you gotta love your Twix, ladies and gentlemen. Man, who hates Twix? Guys, this Twix iced tea coffee is the best. Anyway, well, let's get on with it, guys. So, ladies and gentlemen, the Vice went to the bare knuckle fighting champion in Cheyenne a few days ago ahead of the big event to hear how Feldman managed to pull it off, not pull off of it. And to meet a handful of fighters for whom boxing and even MMA fighting just wasn't hardcore. And guys, I will say though, it was interesting. So the documentary starts out with a bunch of people, just two guys about to show each other, and then we get to some slow motion, back cameras, this or that, and people just punching, and the crowd going crazy. And even though the stadium that day wasn't filled up as much, they had a lot of interesting stuff there. And to be honest, technically, with all due to respect, BKFC, considering for how it was like an amazement of just how they done any of this, because it was crazy. They had an announcer with ugly white hair, a bald referee to start off the show and such, but yeah. And by the way, guys, the last show of bare knuckle fighting already took place on August the 2nd in Buffalo in South Dakota, known as the BKFC Fight Night Sturgis, Go-Go versus Lane. They have a few other shows as we speak, but originally, guys, BKFC Champion 1 was known as the New Beginning. So we get these new interesting fans, people, this or that, and guys that have a broken chipping tooth, a guy with a large white beard, silver, and talking about how his father never amounted to much, and now it's his time to make something big. And we get also a surprising moment where we have a female boxer to actually be in the division. And at this moment, guys, BKFC won the beginning. Consider it was from the Cheyenne Ice and Event Center. At the time, not in Casper, Wyoming. Still. The background of the first bare knuckle event was mostly sanctioned to bare knuckle boxing events since 1889 due to Jake Kilrain and John L. Sullivan. But the event featured the quarterfinals of an 8-man heavyweight tournament. So BKFC would host out a quarterfinal tournament, and then months later, on August the 25th, one day before my 20th birthday, in the Mississippi Coast Coliseum in Biloxi, Mississippi, would be BKFC 2, A New Era, which would have the semifinal boxers, and then the third event on October the 20th, weeks after this event, this documentary came out, would be the main event for the inaugural heavyweight title. They featured out talking about how ladies have no business being in the ring, but they just gave it a chance. So mostly for David Feldman, what do you have to say about him? A man in the darkness of boxing has done a lot of interesting things. And also considering everything else, they do bring out these random interesting posts. So the first thing they talk about, they show a camera of train tracks, and the word says toe the line. And at this moment, the crew talks about the reason why gloves are mandatory is because somehow or another, how they say it, they erroneously believe those gloves protect the fighters, and they don't. Okay, I'm going to disagree with that because, guys, I'm not saying that gloves are not protective. To be honest, guys, gloves are protective because our knuckles, guys, people have to understand, our knuckles can hold as much as we can use it for. But if you're trying to punch someone in the head, you're breaking out your knuckles. You can even have swollen knuckles for a long time, just like the guy the promoter from BBAD Promotions in the UK during the other documentary I talked about would have those swollen out knuckles that are this huge because he's punched so much and they were just so big and fat. People have to understand that our knuckles are brittled, weak. Our head is the strongest. So if you're punching a bunch of times, it's crazy to hit someone. So the guy saying that gloves are not protective and such, it's just ridiculous. And then you go back to the early days of bare knuckle, and they talk about where all bare knuckle rarely saw a knockout, and those used to be 30 rounds in boxing. And yeah, I get it. 30 rounds, 80 rounds, depending on how many rounds you fight in. You fight, and that's it. And to be honest, for MMA and everything else, and how you can say it's okay to kick a guy in the face, but I can't punch you with a bare knuckle. And I do think to myself, okay, I understand. And then we go to a dining motel and this or that, and people just talk about the works and UFC and how they're not mandatory. It is optional. And they got one person saying that they got interviewed after a guy died, and they were saying, do you think that they maybe should have bigger gloves? Or maybe we should make them wear headgear? And to be honest, guys, the world of combat sports always questions that all the time. And their real answer is no gloves. So that's what the documentary is trying to tell us, is that we shouldn't wear gloves. Now, guys, professional boxing, MMA fighting, WWE or wrestling, or even bare knuckle boxing and kickboxing, guys, at the end of the day, people are going to die. That's the way life goes. If you die, you die. And if God's going to take you away, it doesn't matter. People think that everything will be okay if nothing bad happens. Like, Dale Earnhardt is the final NASCAR driver to ever pass away, but he wasn't the last person to pass away live on television. Here's the thing, guys. Formula One and IndyCar racing has a few moments of people passing away after Dale Earnhardt. Even when Dan Weldon passed away in 2011 was a shocker for how crazy that was. And then a few years later, Justin Haley died from a piece of debris in Pocono in 2015. And even some F1 drivers passed away. You think that NASCAR can still be safe doesn't mean that one guy is going to die from inches, just like what happened to Dale Earnhardt. If you get punched in the face by only one little jab, if God's going to take you away just like that, you're going to die. So whether if you're wearing a glove or not, that's up to him. So it doesn't really matter. It really doesn't matter. And I think that's my answer to everyone there. But when they got the information and they finally got some answers and how the brutality of it, but the media conference, they bring it out to the beginning of the world and they have a bunch of these interesting names and the sport right now. And surprisingly, they talk about, and I'm not going to get into the documentary that much, but it's crazy. So we get interesting guys like Rico Rodriguez, Joey Beltran, a guy that used to be mostly competing in UFC. Alma Garcia and Beck Rawlings would be the first two ladies to fight in American bare knuckle and the only fight that night for women's boxing. And then you have this amazing guy that goes by the name of Sam Shoemaker, a man that his father never made it to the big time, but now this is his chance of stepping in. And here's the guy with a large beard, by the way. And then you have guys like Reggie Barnett Jr. and Johnny Belford and Arnold Adams, the guy born in Alaska, and how Alaska doesn't have any fighters in the division that no one cares about. And he's coming in because this is just a new division, so he might get lucky. And surprisingly, I don't think we have to tell you who won the tournament. But so technically so there's some interesting names here that would later become stars, and some that would become forgotten, and some that would fail even when they succeeded the first event. There's nothing much I could say about that. So technically, guys, David Feldman's the president, and his vision is taking... So guys, Feldman's vision in the professional of bare knuckle boxing, as the narrators would say, is rather than taking the easy way, which was to go to a Native American tribe or to a foreign country without regulation, he wanted to make this a true, legitimate combat sport. And wanted to, just do whatever he has to. Just a legitimate sport. His son, David Feldman Jr., would be there, and his son, Feldman Jr., would work with him all the time. And I'm sure that if his father passed away, who knows? So mostly David Feldman, as looking him up, because at this moment, David Feldman, as a surprising bare knuckle president, there's not a lot of information about understanding what he does, considering when I looked up the name David Feldman, the first thing I got was a guy that's nothing more than just a comedian. Because I typed in the name David Feldman and it shows David Beauregard Feldman. And he's a comedian. Of what? So I couldn't find a lot of interesting information about the bare knuckle fighter or the president. But considering whether or not any of this is here, but when I finally did look up the founder as it is, there's also another founder that goes by the name of Dandy Christie. The founder from Philadelphia was a fighter's profile of the division, and he's been reported since June the 28th when he started fighting since he was a kid, an underground and amateur. So considering that being said, I really can't say much about it. Because David Feldman is an interesting story that I wouldn't really say much about it, because considering with everything going on in boxing, and even though we can talk about so much of this stuff, but yet again, guys, I think this is a problem. You see, with David going through a lot of stuff, I wouldn't really say that as being a commissioner, he has been trying to sanction enough places around the world. And it was tough. Because he keeps talking about how everybody is coming against him, and little by little, and thinking that this shouldn't be a thing, and we are new kids in town, and we are a threat. And so when you actually look at all the information, I can see what he's saying, but and talking about how, well, to be honest, I really don't know what to say about this. Let's not get into that. Let's not get into that yet. But guys, let's talk about another person that pushes everything to the limits. We get to an interview where we have a bearded guy, which is Shoemaker, a man that has the power, and a man that his career ended too early, but he tried. A guy who did everything, fighting out of Gravios, Missouri, and the mountain man as he is. And I love the story and the subject of it. It's interesting. And it is interesting, considering who you ask. And I will say, though, the documentary went on pretty interestingly. Because considering how they were floating the I don't know what to say about this, but as they're done talking, they show another guy on stage, a guy that's not about the money, it's not about the stardom, but mostly it's a guy that's done so much stuff. Because it's kind of crazy. I don't know what to explain, because they go to a dark alley and they show a guy that goes by the name of Esteban Payan, known as Tat. And a guy that was a stripper name of Sergeant Payan, and an army name, and known as El Terrible. And this guy with a bunch of tattoos comes out, and he says that he's been in bare knuckle his whole life. He's fought in the streets, and technically, that is interesting. Where you have people do that, you have people that have been out in the streets for a long time, and I will say, though, it's pretty amazing to see that type of stuff. Because I never expected to look at this and say that these people are taking it crazy. Because, guys, a lot of these people that are in the documentary are crazy. But yet again, what's their lifestyle? So I'm sure that these guys would have been a lot younger than they should have. But yeah, again, guys, I think these old fighters that have been in the sport for a long time are like, all right, we couldn't make it to professional boxing. We couldn't do in MMA, so we might as well compete in bare knuckle boxing. Even if we're in our 30s or in our 40s, well, we might as well do it. So they get a little bit of this information going on, and then we go back to David Feldman where they show us a large sheet and a round circle, and he walks up to it talking about how they start their match, where they're towing the line. So it says toe the line. And then he tells us that the fighters will actually come right here from circle with two lines right in the center of the ring of the circle. And keep this in mind, guys, the BKFC ring is a circle. So they go to toe to line, but in MMA and boxing, they say that they start 20 to 22 or 20 to 30 feet across from each other as they start the match. But the match starts where both guys touch knuckles, like they're 3 feet away from us. So imagine being 3 feet away, just throw a punch about 3 feet, and you're going to hit your opponent during the start of the bout. Now, I'm not saying that's a dumb idea, but yet again, one fighter might not expect nothing bad happen, and the other guy's just going to throw a heavy punch, and you're done for. Believe me, that's happened. So, considering that, but with all that being said, they push us towards the other stuff of information here. Because now they take us to a dining restaurant where it has people talking about that they want the violence, but everybody deep down has the violent spot. They have this guy with the cap and the red sweater telling us this, that they have a bunch of rednecks and hillbillies that love boxing, and bare knuckle boxing is too violent, and they're telling us that it's unnecessary. They think, saying that it's hard enough time with MMA fighting, which I agree with that, but with regular boxing, it looks at the violence of boxing of itself. And yet again, you have a guy with a cowboy hat on that looked like Charlie Daniels or something like that, with maybe, and he talks about the best boxer he saw was Muhammad Ali, which is respectful, and he literally got his brains beaten up with gloves when talking about Larry Holmes and such. Yeah, I get that. And then he says that bare knuckle is worse, even much worse. And at the end of the day, I wouldn't really say much about that, but he's got a point. And I said this before, guys, it is what it is. So the reason for bare knuckle boxing is legal right now in 2018. They tell us, well, after everybody said no to us, well, the happening was over and the underground was gone, and well, guess what? Boxing is there. It's safer for the guys and safer for everyone else. Don't get me wrong, guys. 1889 to 2018, where major bare knuckle is coming back, that's ridiculous. And like I said before, guys, we get to a woman that's in the boxing right now, and she gets her talking about for just a few moments. And before you know it, we come to an end. So it's interesting to look at this and say to yourself, this is interesting. We get to ourselves as best we can, and it's interesting because I even love the moment where the guy talks about that some people might not know about this happening. It's the beginning of the unscripted drama. They might not know about it. And then you get these other moments where they talking about, oh, what I love to see is that even though no one might not know about this, but if they look it up on the newspaper and they'll say, oh, hey, look, we have a bare knuckle match going on. Oh, look at this. Huh. We have an event that just happened. Is this a boxing tournament or something? Dang. Which is surprising. All in all, guys, I really can't say much about this. They cut to moments where they have a guy in a red shirt and a gray shirt, and they're just sparring. Well, not sparring, just practicing punching with punching bag. Boom, boom. And then they have a bunch of police coming to make sure nothing goes down, which, let's be honest, it might. It's possible. And before you know it, they just continue on with the show. Now, guys, I'm not going to get to the information of the boxing match or the boxing show yet. I'm going to save that for next week, ladies and gentlemen. So next week, as I'm going to record this next part right now, I'm going to show you viewers the information as we speak. And even though we're already like past the time frame of it, the real information, ladies and gentlemen, is what is going to happen during the first show. Consider they have a bunch of kids, they have a bunch of this, they have just barely everything going on here. They have people, they even have a person out like in the back talking about to make sure that it doesn't look good. They tell us, the officials tell everyone about this or that, and making sure that nothing goes bad. Like if it doesn't look good, if you get hurt, we're gonna stop the fight earlier. But don't be mad at us because we're here for the safety, and that's what we're trying to do. And if you fight the next event, do it, and it has to be that to be perfect. So they're telling us this, and technically we all applaud for it, and good luck and God bless. And then the show is about to start. But to be honest, guys, what's going to happen? Are you ready? It's time for bare knuckle. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to have to save that information next week. But with that being said, guys, see you next time. And shotgun sailor!